for all 77 counties to start preparing for this event. But we are experiencing unprecedented cold weather, and that's leading to record demand on our power grid. I just got off the phone with President Biden's Homeland Security Director, Dr. Liz Sherwood Randall. She told me the White House is ready to help and support Oklahomans any way they can as we manage this storm. We are currently preparing a request for a federal disaster declaration. And one thing we'll be asking for is individual heating and energy assistance. This is going to help Oklahomans better afford these spikes in energy costs that will be coming. We're also asking President Biden to consider a national disaster declaration, which would also unlock more federal aid programs for Oklahomans, and our ag community. Yesterday, we asked Oklahomans to do their part to conserve energy, and those efforts are really paying off. The Southwest Power Pool dropped back down to level 2 this afternoon. That's really good news because it should reduce the chance of power interruptions in the future. However, we still need to conserve energy because we aren't out of the woods yet. Please consider turning your thermostat down to 68 or cooler and avoid using large appliances like washers and dryers or your dishwasher. It may not seem like much, but these small steps together can make a big difference. So thanks again, Oklahoma, for doing your part to help us out. And now I want to turn it over to our Secretary of Energy and Environment, Mr. Ken Wagner.
Thank you, Governor, and good evening. So we first became aware of the unique circumstances related to our power in this storm Friday morning. Prior to that, we were aware of some power interruptions as it related to small municipal utilities and some interruption to customer bases. But Friday morning, we saw I hate to use the term unprecedented, but an unseen spike in natural gas spot market prices that were 40 times what we normally see. And that caused some concern. So we got on the phone and started immediately coordinating with Director Mark Gower's Oklahoma Emergency Management, Brandy Wreath at the Oklahoma Corporation Commission, along with his commissioners, Chairman Hyatt, Dana Murphy, and Bob Anthony, as well as all of our utility providers throughout the state. And this is our gas providers such as Oklahoma Natural Gas and CenterPoint Energy, the big investor-owned utilities, Public Service Company of Oklahoma, and OG&E, as well as our rural electric co-ops and our municipal providers, the Grand River Dam Authority and Oklahoma Municipal Power Authority. And we were able to determine at that time that the Southwest Power Pool, which governs all of our utility usage and generation in the state, that we were satisfied that we had enough power to get us through at least Monday evening. So in fact, so much so that they kept it at a low level that just was, hey, we have an emergency alert on the system and no question about conservation or curtailments or service interruptions. And so we've been tracking that for days. And Saturday, we started hearing that there might be a tightening of our gas supply because of the unprecedented cold. We're seeing freeze-offs, and we've seen our natural gas production in the state reduced by 2/3, or reduced to 2/3 of its normal production levels. So that began to cause some concern. And yesterday, as you noticed, the governor, in consultation with all of our resources, issued the request of Oklahomans to be good neighbors and help ensure that we don't have residential service interruptions. On Saturday, we also saw that our neighbor to the south, Texas, was experiencing millions of people without power and rolling brownouts, and we wanted to ensure that didn't happen in Oklahoma. So again, the message of conservation went out, and we've seen that today we went to a period where the Southwest Power Pool ordered some small service interruptions or curtailments. But because Oklahomans are good at what they do and they care about each other, the message of conservation took. And we've seen them actually withdraw those orders and reduce from level 3, which means service interruptions, to level 2. And so we're thankful for that, but we have to stay vigilant. We know that on the natural gas side of things, not the power generation side, but providing actual natural gas to the homes, that we're seeing reductions in the amount of gas available on the system. And that's twofold. One, we're seeing freeze-offs at the well where water in lines actually freezes and makes movement of gas impossible. And number two, gas processing plants. So even if you can get the raw natural gas, the gas processing plants are shut down due to freezing. So ONG has focused on reductions of service to its industrial and large commercial customers. They've done that to ensure that you as residential customers don't experience these interruptions that we might have otherwise been talking about, and like they're talking about in Texas. So again, as of today, I know of no immediate jeopardy of service interruptions on the natural gas side. And immediately we seem to be in a pretty good place with our electric generation. But that continues to depend on you taking the lead with conserving energy, turning those thermostats down a couple of degrees, and thinking of your neighbor who's hopefully doing the same. We will continue these discussions with these utility providers, and Brandy and the Public Utility Division have been continual conversations. It's like we've never really hung up. And so those conversations occur at midnight, they occur at 7 in the morning, they occur all day long. And so we'll continue to do that. And with that, I would pass the mic along to Brandy Wreath at the Public Utility Commission Division of the Oklahoma Corporation Commission.
Thank you, Secretary Wagner, and thank you, Governor, for inviting us to participate in this critical time. It's very important to the Commission that the public is aware of what's going on, the actions that have been taken, and some of the actions that we're still working on. The Commission has continued to work with our energy providers in responding to this event. As Secretary Wagner said, that really started with the pre-planning phase in preparing for emergency response, and all of the utilities, of course, prior to the storm's arrival, enacted their emergency response plan, had their folks ready to handle outages, brought in extra crews to be on site to ensure that any outages would be as short as possible. And so that's kind of that pre-planning phase that did happen in this storm, as well as having the interruptible tariffs, or basically the contracts with customers that Secretary Wagner spoke of. Those have been critical, and normally those are able to really fill in the gaps of need for a traditional peak that happens on our system. Unfortunately, this storm created such demand, as was mentioned, that new peak has actually been testing the limits of all of the things that are in place to really ensure that that power stays flowing, that gas stays flowing. And so the Southwest Power Pool, as was mentioned, did have to move into a emergency response phase that is always planned for. You know, these are very methodic things. And the goal is to reduce the impact to end users as much as possible while keeping our grids safe so they can provide warmth, heat, and the things that are necessary for life, health, and welfare. And so as they moved into that category 2, that was being done about the same time that the curtailments were happening, or asking large customers to stop usage on the natural gas system. And what I'm happy to report, that at least right now, that we've seen a turnaround in some of those things. You know, as was mentioned, the electric grid was able to stabilize. They were able to bring customers back online. And that is obviously important during these cold weather and the freeze-offs that are happening, that the faster these outages can be brought up, the better. Additionally, the companies have, with the freeze-offs happening, they have stationed CNG trucks around the state to be prepared to fill in for any supply that's needed whenever these system lines are freezing and they can't transport gas the normal way. And so the utilities have responded and have had those in place since prior to the storm, and are able to go in and quickly respond. So if you do have outages, still call your utility and report it. but I can assure you that in working with them closely, they have folks stationed ready to react as soon as possible. But if you're like me, any outage is scary in these times. So we do want to hear from you. We want to make sure that every outage is reported and is being handled. So that's very important. The new peak that was hit today, it was what we're calling almost an unmodelable event. Everything that happens on the electric grid, there's models, figuring out how much is going to be needed so everybody can be prepared. And this storm created such demand in addition to the problem of the natural gas not being able to get places that was mentioned, created kind of a perfect storm that everybody has had to respond to. And I've been very pleased with all of the stakeholders that have been able to collaborate on this. The utilities, the Southwest Power Pool was able to get some power imported from our neighboring states that had some excess that was able to help. But today, whenever the emergency event was called, we were roughly 640 megawatts short on power. And I will tell you, it was probably the most excited I've been in a week whenever we heard the news that Oklahomans had been responding and that the conservation efforts were working and the Southwest Power Pool was able to stand down from that emergency level. Like I said, that was the best news that we've heard all week. In addition to those actions, the commission did have an emergency meeting today. And in that emergency meeting, passed an order that would allow a small number of wells that had restricted flow to go ahead and work at full production. And the hope there is that in some of the areas in the state where there are small systems that may be closed off, that some wells may be able to produce extra and be able to help shore up some of those systems while the larger transportation system becomes more stable. So we're hopeful that that is going to be helpful. In addition, we continue to work with the regulated energy providers to look at other issues that may be hampering flow or anything that can be done. Have been able to work very closely with Secretary Wagner and with Office of Emergency Management in coordination of being able to handle some of these issues as they arise. The final thing I would say is that, we are still not out of the woods, as was mentioned earlier. This could turn around on a dime if there's additional weather events. We know that the coldest days that are still coming. We still need people to stay vigilant with those requests because Southwest Power Pool, as quickly as we came out of a tier 3, we could be put back in one, and that could result in outages. So we want to ensure that people are taking those steps that are being mentioned. The 3 biggest that we ask folks to do is to adjust those thermostats if you can. A degree or 2 can make a very large difference in the amount of electricity that is consumed. Stay safe, but put it as low as you can and still stay safe in your home. Unplug unused devices. People don't think about it, but every device you have sitting around your house, if it's plugged in, it can be pulling power. And if you think about the size of Oklahoma and the amount of things that we have plugged in, if we all do our part and go through the house and unplug those, we can have a significant power savings that can assist the system. And then finally, to really moderate the usage of those large appliances. The washers, dryers, dishwashers, we take for granted because it's not something we see actively consuming electricity, like sitting in front of a television or other devices, but they consume such large amounts that if we can reduce that, we see significant savings on the system. And we're basically just asking folks to say, can this wait a couple of days to help a neighbor? And so that's really the message that we're trying to share through our social media. And we just want to say again, thank you to everyone that responded to the governor and to the utilities request to conserve. You made a difference today. And so we just need to keep that effort up. And we believe in you. We're in this with you together and want to say thank you. And with that, I would turn it over to Mr. Gower from Office of Emergency Management. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wreath. Statewide, we've seen heavy snow and record-breaking low temperatures impacting travel, water systems, and life safety as you, Oklahomans, work to stay safe and warm. The Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security continues to coordinate with your local emergency managers across the state to work to address resource requests for water, heating, sheltering needs, and supporting our first responders out there working in this cold weather. With temporary electric service interruptions still possible across the state, it's a good time to take steps now to prepare for a temporary outage. The use of alternate heating sources during a power outage can cause carbon monoxide to build up and poison people or animals. With temperatures in the single digits, it's now more important than ever to make sure Oklahomans know how to prepare and stay safe if the power goes out. First, gather up flashlights, batteries, and extra blankets in your home and plan to dress in extra layers for warmth. Be especially careful with alternative heating sources such as generators. Be sure it's not running inside your home or your garage, and generators should be placed outside at least 5 feet from any doors or windows to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning. You should never burn charcoal or use any unvented gas or kerosene heater in enclosed spaces, and be sure to use proper ventilation with portable propane heaters as well. Keep an eye out for carbon monoxide exposure symptoms. That includes headache, dizziness, weakness, sleepiness, nausea, and or vomiting. If you suspect carbon monoxide poisoning, open a door or windows, turn off the gas appliances, and go outside and get a little fresh air, and dial 911 if you believe you have carbon monoxide poisoning. I know people are worried about frozen pipes during a power interruption and these cold temperatures. Be sure to let faucets drip and leave cabinet doors open to prevent pipes from freezing. And finally, do what we do as Oklahomans every day. Check on our elderly friends, neighbors, and relatives, and especially those that are living alone. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Governor Stitt.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'll open it up to some questions from the press for our experts and our panel.
All right. Local utilities are reporting their upstream suppliers are out of natural gas. Is that true? That's from KJRH.
Wagner, can you take that one?
I can, yes. I'm trying to figure out the unmute button. So what we're hearing is it's not so much that they're out of gas as much as they're not acquiring new gas because of the freeze-offs and the shutdown of the gas processing plants. Now, there are other third-party sources, we're told, that are able to get gas, but we haven't heard that they're, quote, out of gas. I think that's not necessarily accurate. And I have not heard from my detailed discussions with Oklahoma Natural Gas that other than curtailing large industrial customers and large commercial customers, that there's any suggestion of interruption for residential customers. But again, we can play our part by recognizing that human health is the most important thing. Human health and safety is the most important thing we can do and conserve.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Ken, is Oklahomans conserving played a huge role. I also talked to our oil and gas industry. They were able to get some gas wells online to provide more supply. But with an all of the above approach to energy that we have in Oklahoma, we're tied into the Southwest Power Pool, which is 17 other states. I talked to Governor Ricketts of Nebraska just earlier today, and because they have coal available, 56% of their electricity generation right now is from coal. Oklahoma, traditionally 40% of our production comes from wind energy. But right now and you might speak to this, Ken, but some of the wind turbines are actually having to be shut off. We don't have solar at this point. So we're really fortunate, and we need to make sure that we have good infrastructure on the natural gas side so we don't have the disruptions that some of the other states are having as well.
That's right. I would simply add that wind is generating some, and we're thankful for every bit. We're actually thankful for every resource that we have on the grid today. But one of the things in a weather event like this is that the turbines themselves, the blades, are subject to icing, much like an aircraft. And that causes an imbalance in the way they rotate and can cause permanent damage to the infrastructure. And then the second thing is sometimes when these high winds, they actually cause the turbines to spin too fast and can cause damage, so they have to shut them down. But one of the reasons why we've actually done better today than we thought is because wind generation has assisted. And again, a big shout out to all the oil and gas producers who are working overtime to make sure these wellheads don't freeze and transportation's available so you have heat.
Okay, thanks for that, Ken. Next question.
This is from Paul Moniz with Oklahoma Watch for Mr. Wreath. What safeguards are in place at the OCC?
Did we lose him?
Yeah.
Okay, I can finish reading it. What safeguards are in place at the OCC Public Utility Division to protect residential consumers from the massive spikes in natural gas prices? So that is something that is a critical focus for the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. There are a number of things in place that include utilities do have some amount of their supply that is covered through physical contracts that are contracted for in advance of events. So that greatly reduces their risk on market volatility for that portion. Unfortunately, what is not usually done on a pre-priced amount is things related to a peak, which this event has created new peaks, as we've been talking about all day. And so those prices are usually subject to the spot market, which is where we've seen a lot of the increases. So while we don't know costs yet, because that's something that comes after getting the system up, that's been the focus right now, get gas to folks and keep them warm, in public health and safety. We will be having conversations about the costing, trying to get an order of magnitude of what those impacts are. And I will say that while this is the first storm of this type that has created a spike for us, we have had circumstances before where this arose, such as hurricanes in the past. And so the commission always works with utilities and stakeholder groups to try to get that impact lessened on the immediate bills of customers and try to mitigate as much as possible. However, it is important to note that these costs have increased. Those are something that we have to be aware of. And that's another benefit of the conservation. And that message, shouldn't be lost for consumers. If you conserve, not only are you helping keep your neighbor warm, you're going to help keep those costs down as much as possible for yourself. So those things are still in place. And I'm sure there will be more to come in discussions with the commission and the increased cost and how to best handle those in the long term.
All right, the next question is, so as I understand, we knew there were some problems on Saturday. However, we didn't really hear anything until Sunday or Monday. Why is that? And also, does this lead to concerns about the aging infrastructure?
Wagner, do you want to take that?
Sure. And I tried to lay it out on the timeline. Saturday, I can assure you we were having hourly calls with our utilities, with the Southwest Power Pool, their regulatory affairs folks and operations folks. All of our people, Brandy, like I said, Brandy and Director Gower and I have been connected via telephone for it seems like 72 hours straight, but it's intermittent. So as soon as we believed that there was any reason for concern, that's when we got the conservation message out, which was early Sunday. But on Saturday, until late that evening, there really wasn't any reason to believe there was going to be any problem. I believe between Saturday night and Sunday morning, there was a significant amount of well freeze off that really wasn't showing up on Saturday. So I think that is really why we got it out as quickly as we really thought it was a message that Oklahomans needed to hear. You always deal with not wanting to create panic, but get the right amount of transparent information out. And that's where we were.
And Secretary Wagner, the other thing I think that helps for Oklahomans to understand is there's 17 states on our grid. It's called the Southwest Power Pool. So it's not like Oklahoma, we generate just the electricity for Oklahoma. We're in a big grid. So what happens in Texas and Nebraska and other states also goes into effect the electricity grid in Oklahoma. Can you kind of speak to that big picture so Oklahomans can understand that?
I can. So the member states of the Southwest Power Pool has a small part of Texas, very kind of in the panhandle, the western half of Arkansas and Missouri, and then it goes up through Kansas to the Dakotas and into Montana. And so we as members, the Southwest Power Pool, which is out of Little Rock, Arkansas, actually governs what resources are used. And in a period like this, they call all resources to be ready to be used. And they also make for firm commitments for their fuel. through a specific date. And this date, the call was through Monday, through tonight, which they thought was going to be the worst part. So utilities were forced to go purchase gas or make sure they had enough coal on the system to make firm commitments through Monday to assure that power was had. And so those decisions are actually made not at the state level, not at the corporation commission level, not at Director Gower's level, but an organization that really is responsible for the reliability and efficiency of our entire grid, with its member institutions like all of the power providers that we've talked about today. And I will tell you that Southwest Power Pool is responsible for the most affordable energy in the country. They're better at it than the other parts of the country. And we've seen that with what our neighbors to the south are experiencing with rolling blackouts that have been going on for the better part of 2 days. And while we have had just a minuscule amount of that, with hope that we don't have any more.
Thank you, Secretary Wagner. Last question. This is for Brandy.
Could we see more rolling electric blackouts across the state, and how can people be prepared?
So it is possible that there could be more of the, as they call it, load shedding requirement from the Southwest Power Pool. As has been mentioned, they do dispatch the power for Oklahoma. However, I would remind everybody that that really is within our power. The only energy that has to be generated is the energy that we're using. So if people will heed this message as they did earlier today and conserve and only use energy for those absolute necessities, to find ways to turn off extra devices, then we, just as happened today, that Oklahomans' response made the difference, we can keep this from happening again. So anything is possible. If we lost a power plant, if there was something else that occurred. So I never say never, because people need to be prepared. Have those extra blankets, have your warm clothes ready to go. As Mr. Gower mentioned earlier, some of the things that you can do to be prepared. In Oklahoma, one good thing about us, we try to stay prepared for emergencies, and then we respond greatly. So let's be prepared just in case it's going to come, but then let's work together, do our part. Those small differences that you make will have a big impact on the system and help weather this storm. So it is possible, be prepared, but let's do our part. I believe in our ability to pull together and make a difference and keep that from happening.
Very well said, Brandy. I really appreciate everybody jumping on this call just to update Oklahomans. And I'll just echo that. Let's keep be vigilant. Let's conserve energy to make sure we don't have these kind of rolling reductions. And just want to thank everybody for jumping on this call. And we're hard at work, obviously in contact with the feds and our state authorities, our utility companies, to make sure that we don't have any disruptions in the future. So thanks again for everybody's time, and we'll get back to an update soon.